So now we're going to be talking about nomadic conquests, often known as the steppe peoples, the Turkic and Mongolian invasions from 1000 to 1400, roughly. So, what are we talking about? The steppes of Asia. And this is very interesting because you are going to have these people who are living in very difficult living conditions in a very relatively obscure way, and who are just going to burst out of the scene and become major players on a global level. And so um, that part alone is very interesting, and to why, particularly this time in history, that they bust out onto the scenes is also somewhat of a mystery, or something to always be analyzed by historians. So, who were these people? Well, basically they were nomadic, so they would set up camp in places good for grazing. They ate mainly meat, milk, cheese, and butter. Okay, it's a very sparse diet. I mean, this is not, where's the veggies, right? And so they had herding as the main way of life for most of the people living in Central Asia. And as you can see, there's no trees. Trees, that's the thing. Bushes, what's out here? Not much to survive on, which is why they're going to be mainly herding and living off their animals. So the family social structure, women played prominent roles. So despite the prevalence of, let's say, rape known in the conquest of the Mongols and Turkic peoples and warfare, and it's not to say that women were equal, but they played very prominent roles. And later we'll see how that when the Mongols ruled China, for instance, Confucian scholars, and as we know, we studied Confucianism, is very male dominated, are just appalled by wives having a say in anything, but let alone major political decisions. And wives were often consulted in ways that maybe you wouldn't expect out of people that you're outwardly seeing as so warlike, coming out of the steppes and these invasions that are going to occur. But in any case, women do have prominent roles compared to the cultures, many of the cultures they were in contact with. They were organized in to clans and tribes, just like much of the world. And they had federations typically led by an overlord called a Khan. Okay, and they practiced a religion that we deem as shamanism, and you basically had a world of spirits. Okay, and this is going to be interesting because one of the points that I've brought up in many of my classes is that while religion is always blamed on wars, we're going to see that with Mongolian and Turkic people, they had their own indigenous form of religion. They didn't seem to care much about in terms of discriminating, and it wasn't any impulse for their invasions. And this is why it's kind of one of the cases that I have of why I don't believe that religion is necessarily the cause of wars, but often used to unify people in the cause of war by political leaders often. It's another topic, but I think it is important to integrate into this, and I think the Mongolians and Turkic people are an example of what I'm talking about. Again, just to kind of give you the scope of some of the various peoples that come out of this area. It's not, I mean, you have in Central Asia, you're going to have the Huns coming out of this area. The Aryans early on, and I'm talking about early on, Hittites. So, prior to the events that we're talking about, there is a history of people coming out of this region, and again, it's a little bit murky on what are all the reasons for that. Probably because maybe sometimes people realize there's more resources somewhere else. All right, so again, when you're having a broad topic like this in a short amount of time, we're just gonna have to get to certain chunks. So the Seljuk conquests in 1025, these Seljuk Turks enter northeastern Persia, and they're being chased by other Turkish tribes out of Central Asia. So there might be some of the reasons, obviously, for some migrations here. In this process, they took over Persia and then drove into Mesopotamia. And they converted to Islam and tried to eliminate Shiites. So we know about the Shiite-Sunni split. And this is, again, though, where I want to say, I mean, look, Turks are coming in, invading. They then embrace a religion that's already in the area, Islam. And the power play between Shiites and Sunnis, in a sense, they inherit. And if you're going to want a unified nation, you're going to try to knock off the opposition that might disrupt your unity, right? So is this a religious debate, or is this a political unity debate? Especially when we consider that they were not even coming in, invading, not even based on a religious pretext, right? So that's just something to think about there. Here's a map kind of showing where they're at as well. So Sultan Alp Arslan, he was bent on eliminating Shiaism and focused on Shiite Fatimid Egypt. He became victorious, came into victorious conflict with the Byzantine Empire and got Syria and Palestine. And this time Turks flooded Anatolia. So remember, I mean, so this explains how we get to modern Turkey when all of this area was Eastern Roman Empire for so long. Okay, it's at this point that we start seeing a massive migrations and invasions of Turks, and they encouraged Islamic immigration and restricted Christianity. Anatolia was a Greco-Roman Christian foothold for almost 1,000 years, but then it was transformed into a Turkic Muslim region that we have today as Turkey. Okay, so that explains the kind of background as to where we get to from that Eastern Roman Empire into now a Turkish region. Okay. The realm was centered in Persia, and they had love of Persian culture. And so here's also what's interesting is that these elites adopted the Persian language, Farsi, okay, and used Persian administrators to bring Persian ruling structures. And one book I have on Islam talked about the fact that, I mean, here from this point on, while it's the Arabs who initially spread Islam and came out, from this point forward, we really see, especially now, that Arabs play, in terms of political leadership, a relatively little role in the Islamic world. And you're going to have these Turkic peoples are going to be the central spreaders and power holders of the Islamic world. And as Turks spreading Persian culture, making the Persian language and aspects of Persian institutions a part of the greater Islamic world in a way that doesn't replace Arabic, but really it's like on par with it. And it leaves a legacy. I mean, this is Islamic Persia, no doubt, but still with a very distinct Persianness to it. And keep in mind that while Iran now, which is Persia, is Shiite, it wasn't Shiite until later. So it's still mainly Sunni in the earlier times. And as we're seeing here again, there's a continued warfare against the Shiites. You'll see this play out, and again, I make my case that this is about political unity, and there can't be both as strongholds, okay, when it comes to political power. So, all right. So we have, let's say, 1090. A man named Hassan ibn Sabah, known as Sheikh el-Jabal, the old man of the mountain, and he created a unique Shiite resistance / terrorist group. Many of his followers slayed countless Sunni leaders, and he operated for almost 170 years. It is widely believed that the word assassin in English comes from hashishin, which meant hashish users, which they would take hashish for various purposes in their little sect of Shiites. It's a very interesting legacy, and I'm not going to go into much more detail, but feel free to look up the Old Man of the Mountains. A very interesting time period, and kind of merges into Crusade history. You can find documentaries discussing more about it as well. Okay, so I will move on to the next section in the next lecture.